Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of The Democratic View. I'm the hostess. My name is Phyllis Italiano, and with me I have a woman I have long admired, and I'm happy to say is also my friend. It's Rona Klopman. She is a candidate on many lines, as a matter of fact. Reformed Democrat and a candidate for trustee. Welcome, Rona.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We have seen you many times in the audience of every town board meeting. Since how many years?
11
wow.
years I've been there.
You're even longer than me with my 8 years of doing this show.
And if I'm not there, I'm watching it. And board meetings and trustee meetings. So I'm very active in the community.
I know you are. I know you are. You are really one of the kinds of people that every community really needs to have, because,
well, thank you.
You know, people who are interested and are part of the community and the fabric of the community are very important in any community. They really do make up and steer the communities into the right directions.
You know, it was funny because we were out getting petitions for the Democratic primary. Because I'm on the Republican, I'm on the Independent, I'm on the Working Families and the Conservative line, and we just filed petitions for the Democratic line. And I was out there with a Republican because her sister's running for town justice. So she was out there with me, and people could not believe that a Democrat and a Republican were actually working together for the community. And I said, you know, when I was on the Democratic committee, I mean, it was unheard of to talk to a Republican, no less.
You're
stand
right.
outside
You're right.
and, you know, work with somebody. But, you know, for the community, I mean, you know, and I have found the nicest friends, you know, just talking to other people who are community-minded people.
Well, that's great. Well, you know what the man said, all politics is local. And
yeah.
so what?
It's not Democrat, it's not Republican.
That's right.
We are not dealing with, you know, the federal government. We're dealing with what is local and what is good for our community.
Right.
And there's a lot that needs work in this community.
I should say. Well, you know, I mean, of course, for me, the biggest issue always is water quality.
Well, that's important. You know, there are other things that are happening all over the community. I mean, you've got Montauk, you know, with the beaches and the erosion, and you've got the Duryers. I mean, you've got Deepwater Wind in Wainscott. You've got lots of issues in this community, and we just recently had the music issue, where you have to be a part of helping the people in this community if the law doesn't look right. You know, if it doesn't look right and it doesn't smell right, it's not right. So, you know, it's, you have to be, if you really care about this community, you have to really put your name out there and stand up for what you believe in.
Tell me something about being a trustee. I know you do go to those meetings all the time. As a matter of fact, I watch them also when they're on. And we've all heard of the Dungan patent, and which is, I want to say an ancient, but it's not really ancient, but it's since the beginning of
1630s.
Yeah, it's since the beginning of East Hampton.
Right.
That the first group of people who really governed this town were the trustees.
They were the original government.
Yes,
right.
That's right.
They were given by the King of England, they were given certain roads, bodies of water, beaches, land, you know, where and somehow or other, over the years, they've even lost track of the roads that belong to them. And they're now finding in East Hampton roads that are going through people's houses. I mean, it's quite, one of the trustees, Susan Vorpal, is working on what roads they own. Nobody's ever done that before.
Wow.
So good for her.
Wow.
And so they are researching it. They have somebody from the East Hampton Library who's a researcher. He does the archives. And they're working to find out which roads, because there's lots of disputes that happen. People want to expand their property, and the Trustee Road turns out to be right in their backyard.
Really?
Yep, and they've sort
of, wow.
The record has disappeared over the years. So, you know, I mean, lots of things, you know, have happened in this community, which we sort of have to make right, you know. I mean, it is the original, you know, the original government in East Hampton was the trustees. And over the years, they've changed. There are 9 now, but at one time there were 5, at one time there were 7, and
sort
they
of like
kept
the
changing
Supreme
it.
Court was,
right,
too.
they kept changing. Well, except the Supreme Court hasn't changed yet, although they're talking about
The Supreme Court did change under Franklin Delano.
right, Roosevelt, right.
There were
and
more.
now they're talking about it again.
Really?
Yeah, they're talking about expanding it.
I hope they don't do it for a few years.
I don't think we could take the trauma.
But what exactly do they now supervise, the trustees? What are they?
Well, they have certain areas. They take care of Georgica Pond and the letting of the pond. They take care of certain beaches. And as a matter of fact, every time, if you watch the ZBA, somebody wants to expand their land and their title isn't exactly right with the lines of where their property is, they say, you know, the beach is mine. And then they have to go back to the history books and see which beaches the trustees really own. And I'd like to see like a listing of those. It's never, I don't think they really have a list of which properties are really theirs in researching and which properties, you know, are not theirs. Because there's always a dispute. Do the trustees own this? Do the trustees own that land? Do they own this beach? Do they own that beach? Like now there was a question of moving on Albert's Landing, which is in Amagansett, of moving the bathing beach. And it turns out...
I know that beach. It's a lovely little beach.
Yeah, there's Little Alberts and Big Alberts.
Yeah.
And they wanted... There's a groin there. It was part of the old Bell Estate, and it's all rusted. So the town board voted to remove the groin on the beach. And they wanted to move the bathing area because the kids evidently have a lifeguard program there, the 8-year-olds. And so they wanted to move it further south. And I guess the town board last Tuesday decided not to move it. Because I guess it's an election year. You don't touch a beach in an election year. I mean, I couldn't quite, you know, figure out why they wanted to move it to begin with. And Thursday night they voted to have a food truck there.
A food truck?
Yeah, a food truck, a vendor truck. So.
Oh, well, what do they always say? Follow the money? The commercialization of a
Yes, commercialization of a town, yeah.
Of a little baby
beach, right. Mm-hmm.
Oh, shame on them.
That was voted. I have a feeling that Mr. Bragman did not agree with them.
I know Mr. Bragman would not agree to that.
No.
That's not his style.
No, and they wanted to portion off an area of it for jet skis and kayaking. And I think that could be a conflict of interest for one of the board members, the kayaking area. Anyway, they just decided to leave it alone. Thursday night they went for the for the food truck. I heard they voted for it. And to remove the groin. The town is paying, I think, $15,000 to remove the groin on the beach. But they had Brian Frank, whom I respect very much, who's in the planning department, who said, don't touch the groin in the water, because we don't know how the sand's going to flow. And if you remove that, you're removing marine life. And they have no idea in the water what's happening. So they're only going to remove the beach part to the groin, and nobody knows what's going to happen because of course no experts have been approached to see what would happen if they removed the whole groin. That would not be transparent.
God forbid they should seek an opinion from somebody who knows.
Right, an expert.
Who has background and knowledge.
Yeah, well, they're not doing that. I mean, as with Deepwater, I mean, they haven't brought in any information. So it's...
Well, that's unfortunate that there's not the idea that maybe you don't know it all, and maybe you should get people who know more than you to tell you what
always
to
good
do.
to get expert opinion. I mean,
well, you know what?
You can't just, the town board was once, a couple of months ago, doing a thing with a stop sign on Stephen Hand's path. And they were talking, and they go like, yeah, I think I want a four-way stop sign. No, I think I want a roundabout. And they got no opinions about anything. But they go like, well, we'll try the four-way stop sign, and if that doesn't work, then we can always go to the roundabout. But nobody is bringing in anybody as an expert. Have you studied traffic there? Do you really know what would go? I mean, it's like in Montauk. The Hamlet studies are doing roundabouts all over the place, and poor Montauk and Wainscott, they're fighting for their community.
I don't blame them. I hate roundabouts, as a matter of fact.
And now you have the PSEG substation in Montauk. That's a whole other issue. So there's a lot going on in this community, in this town, which are local issues.
And you know something that people may not know about you, but the fact of the matter is that you and I are from the same ilk. We are both teachers.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
What did you teach?
I taught reading. I did enrichment programs for the very gifted, and I did remedial programs for those who are struggling.
So we need to get, maybe we should have you doing some of that for the town board.
Right. It's not a bad idea. So, you just learn how to put things together when you're a teacher. You learn how to do lesson plans and bring in
learn how to do research when you're teaching something new, too.
Yes,
as a science teacher, believe me, I had to do that all the time.
Right, and how to explain it so the kids understand it.
That's right.
So it's definitely a skill.
But I understand that the trustees, and this is something I've often never quite understood, they own something called the bottom land. What does that exactly mean?
That's a certain amount of land. Well, you've got Georgica Pond. They own that. That's bottom land. So that if somebody wants to remove phragmites and such from in front of their property on the bottom land, they have to get a permit from the trustees to do that. And the DEC, which is a relatively new part of government, because when the trustees were first appointed by the King of England,
no DEC.
No DEC. It wasn't around. But now it's state law, so they must get approval. And the DEC says you can't do that more than twice a year. So they must get a permit and certify that they've only done it twice a year to cut them. And I'm not sure why they can only do it twice a year, except that that's what the DEC law is. So,
I also thought that they own something up to the high water mark.
High water mark, right?
Yeah. What does that mean?
Well, It's when the tide comes in, that's the high water.
High tide, yeah.
That's the high water mark. And, of course, the ocean moves in and out. So they could own up to, the dune on a beach, if that's where the water comes up, or they could own, at low tide. So it moves, it fluctuates with the tide.
I watched that tide for 35 years at Fire
Right.
Island. I know how high the tide comes, and it certainly does sometimes come up very high on high tide.
We're talking about the beaches. I'm very active in the Citizens Advisory in Amagansett. I'm the secretary there. So we have a lot of issues coming up, one of which currently is the CPF property, 555. So, and having
yes.
events on them, on that property, which it was never, when the town purchased it for CPF fund, it was never supposed to have events on it. I think the only one that Larry Cantwell did was Soldier's Ride, because that was important. It was a recreation for our veterans.
Right,
So
right.
that I can understand. But recently they have wanted to put events and mass gathering permits on that property. So as a matter of fact, Monday there is a Citizens Advisory meeting where it will be discussed before it was passed by the town board. So that's important, and I'm also on the Recycling Litter Committee as secretary, and Kathleen Kirkwood, who's our chair, is doing a phenomenal job. We're doing spots on WLNG, for banning straw. We banned straws, plastic straws, and plastic styrofoam. And my next pet project is to ban smoking from the beaches. I probably get smokers attacking me, but because the filters are, they just flick them on the beach. They're all over. It's 130% increase in the number of cigarette filters that you find on the beaches.
I go down to Flaggy Hole in
The Springs,
where I live in Springs, and people, workmen come and they sit over there. Well, not only just workmen, but people come. They come and they stand and they sit and they all. I can't tell you the amount of cigarette butts that I clean up over there. I mean, and my kids have said to me, you're touching something that somebody else had in their mouth.
It's cellulose acetate, and it's toxic.
I said, I'm sorry, I can't leave them here. I can't stand all of I can pick up 30, 40 in the summertime cigarette butts at the end of Flaggy Hole. It's just awful.
Well, when you think about it, if somebody is smoking, sitting next to you on a beach, you're out there to enjoy the air, and if they're smoking, they're actually smoking through the filter, but you're not. You're sitting there and smelling, inhaling all that smoke, which is totally toxic. They've got the filter, which some of it filters
It's
through.
toxic to them too, honey. It really is.
The filters, they have, I think there are 7,000 components which are toxic in cigarette filters. There's formaldehyde, which they embalm. There's all kinds of really toxic material that makes up that cigarette. So as a matter of fact, I've gone to the trustees already with that, and I've gotten sort of a unanimous approval to go ahead with possibly banning cigarette smoking on the beaches. And then I've spoken to Ed Michaels, who's head of Marine Patrol,
yes.
whether it can be enforced if we ban smoking. And he believes, he's going to get back to me, but he believes that if you are on a lifeguarded beach, that it's not a good thing. Because people look at a beach with the sand and think it's a big ashtray. And what are you going to do? You don't have any glass on the beach. It's not permitted. So where do you put your cigarette out? In the sand.
And you know, one time, a few years ago, I went to a lifeguarded beach with my son and my granddaughter and stuff like that. And they were already on the beach, and I left my shoes in the car and walked down on the beach, and somebody had left a cigarette butt, and it was still, you know, kind of hot, and I stepped on it.
Oh my gosh!
And,
oh my gosh!
You know, I had to immediately run down to the water and put my foot in the water. So
Wow.
it can be very dangerous.
Yeah, well, it's like a beach fire.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, we got that regulated, sort of. You know, but we're trying to get announcements out there for the people who come in the summer to understand what it is to make a beach fire. You know, how important it is to have water available. How, you know, hopefully, you know, not to litter, but to take it to the dump and recycle it at the dump, you know, and we're trying to get rental registries to have, it's a great committee, you know, and we're trying to get rental registries to give information to renters, you know, that they can get a permit.
Oh, that's a very good idea.
And, you know, you can if you rent a house, you can get $115 permit, and you can go to the dump any number of times if you're here for the summer. So.
And when you do have a fire on the beach, because I really must say I hate what they leave behind. Aren't you supposed to have something that it's in?
It's supposed to have yes, it has to be in a metal container, and you have to have a bucket of water, which you get from the ocean itself,
Or
to
the
put
bay.
on it, and you have to remove it, which means if you're going to make a fire and go through it, you can't just leave it and walk away. You'll get a ticket.
Good luck with that one.
I know.
Where I come
That's
come
code
from,
enforcement.
Let me tell you, holy mackerel, it's on the, you know, and we do pick it up. I mean, the people who go to the beach in the bay do go and pick up these pieces of burned stuff. But people are not diligent.
Particularly, I think people who are in the community who live here are very respectful. I think it's the people who come out here and say, oh, this is great, let's make a fire. And they bring their kids down to the beach, they make the fire, and they go like, okay, now roast a marshmallow. And the next thing is, okay, what are we going to do next? So they leave the fire.
Yeah.
And they don't take the time to put it out. They dig a little sand, they bury it, and that's not good. It's not good for people who are walking on the beach. It's not good for animals, for dogs. I have heard many stories about dogs, you know, burning their paws.
Well, and
on
also
fires.
when the tide comes up, and the tide does come up sometimes, you know, then it's, you know, it just gets taken out to
The burnt wood, yeah, it's in the water.
Yeah.
And sometimes they use wood that has nails in it. And you can't do that because, you know, you're leaving that on the beach.
Now, are the trustees ever involved in promoting the growth of the eelgrass? You know, the eelgrass is
Well,
very
I think
important.
they try to work with Cornell Cooperative to do that. They're working with the oysters and...
One oyster, 50 gallons a day it filters. Isn't that something?
amazing, isn't it?
And they're so delicious. Every time I go out to eat, I always have them. I love them.
And then they recycle the shells.
Yes, you know, we do that now. When we go clamming, or we save the shells and go back and throw them back in the water so that they will, you know, because you really shouldn't take that out.
Right,
The
right.
calcium
Well,
carbonate that makes up that shell.
but, you know, there are communities where people are worried about boating, with the oyster farms because they're arranged. I was out on the water last year looking at them. They're arranged in cages. So you got to find shallow areas where boating is not affected, because the trustees have different areas where they have pilings that boats can tie up to. There's a fee. They have kayaks. You can rent a kayak if you go to the trustee office. So they deal with a lot of different issues, and along with permits for.
Really, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, they have kayaks in Lazy Point, and they buy kayak racks. They have pump out boats that they I think they have 2 or 3 pump out boats where if you're boating, you're supposed to hook up and clean out your waste.
You certainly are one of the most well-informed people that I know out here. I mean, you have been a participant in all that has gone on. 11 years?
11 years.
That's amazing. That really is amazing.
And it's all about community. It's where I live. I love this community and want to keep it, as nice and pristine, and water quality and community issues, and you have to really watch and listen. And, help is on the way, maybe.
Well, yeah, well, good. Well, we're wishing you lots of good luck in this fight, because I know you are a warrior, if ever there has been one.
And transparent, too.
That's right. Good luck, Rona.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was my pleasure, I can assure you.